We are diving into the Scrum Master's Toolkit, specifically focusing on the Sprint Retrospective, the engine of improvement. Imagine you are a marathon runner in the vibrant city of Pune. If you run the same path every day without ever checking your heart rate, your pace, or your footwear, you'll never get faster, you'll just get tired. The Sprint Retrospective is that vital moment when you stop, catch your breath, and look at the path you just ran. In formal terms, it is a dedicated meeting at the end of each sprint where the team inspects its own process, interactions, and tools to identify ways to work better together. In simple words, it is the team's quality check on how they behave and operate. It is not about blaming anyone for what went wrong. It is about finding the tiny tweaks that make the next sprint smoother than the last. If you ignore this, you are just grinding through work without ever growing. So now that we've mastered the idea that the retrospective is our dedicated time for team growth, you might be wondering how we keep this from turning into a boring, unproductive meeting where nothing actually changes. Well, that brings us right into our next step, which is the importance of creating a psychologically safe space for the team. Think of a football coach in a stadium in Kolkata. If the players are terrified that they will be punished for every mistake, they will hide their errors, and the coach will never know why the team is losing. To fix the strategy, the coach needs the players to be honest about what happened on the field. That is psychological safety. Formally, it is an environment where team members feel comfortable taking risks and being vulnerable in front of each other. Simply put, it is the feeling that I can say what I think without getting fired or laughed at. You have probably seen this at the office where the loudest person in the room dictates the entire retrospective while everyone else stays silent. That is a failed retrospective. As a Scrum Master, your job is to make sure the quietest person feels just as safe to speak as the manager. When people feel safe, they share the real problems, like I didn't have the right access or the meeting times are confusing, which allows the team to solve them. So, now that we have mastered the need for an open, honest environment, you might be wondering what specific questions we should ask to get the conversation moving. Well, that brings us right into our next step, which is the art of gathering data. Picture yourself leading a team that has just finished a project in Bengaluru. If you just ask, how did it go? You will probably just get a fine from everyone. That helps nobody. You need to gather data. The formal definition here is the process of surfacing specific observations and events from the sprint to provide a clear picture of reality. In simple terms, it is just gathering the facts before we start judging them. I like to use simple techniques like start, stop, and continue. What should we start doing that we haven't tried yet? What is clearly not working that we should stop right now? And what is going so well that we should definitely continue it? This forces the team to look at concrete actions rather than vague feelings. It gives us a map of where we have been. So, now that we've mastered how to pull the facts out of the team in a structured way, you might be wondering how we take all that data and turn it into actual solutions. Well, that brings us right into our next step, which is analyzing the root causes of our challenges. Imagine a car in Delhi that won't start. If you just keep trying to jumpstart the battery, but the real issue is that the fuel line is broken, you are never going to get that car moving. Root cause analysis is the detective work we do to find the real reason behind a problem. The book style definition is a systematic process for identifying the underlying causes of a failure rather than just treating the symptoms. Plainly put, it is asking why 5 times. Why did we miss the deadline? Because the testing took too long. Why did testing take too long? Because the environment wasn't ready. Why wasn't it ready? Because we didn't ask for it early enough. Why didn't we ask? Because we didn't know who to call. Now we have a real problem we can solve. We don't just blame the testers. We fix the communication process. So now that we've mastered how to dig past the surface to find the real issue, you might be wondering how we ensure that all this talking actually leads to real world change. Well, that brings us right into our next step, which is creating an actionable improvement plan. If you leave a retrospective with a list of 20 things you want to change, you will probably change absolutely nothing. You will be overwhelmed. Creating an actionable improvement plan means being disciplined enough to pick the one or two things that will make the biggest difference. The formal definition involves selecting specific, measurable improvements to implement in the upcoming sprint. In simple words, it is picking your top priority battle. If the team agrees that better communication is key, don't say we will communicate better. Say we will have a 5-minute sync up every morning to align on daily goals. See the difference? One is a wish, the other is a plan. As a Scrum Master, your role is to hold the team accountable for that small, concrete action item, making sure it doesn't just disappear into an email inbox somewhere. So now that we've mastered the art of turning a discussion into a concrete commitment, you might be wondering how we check if those changes actually worked. Well, that brings us right into our next step, the feedback loop of continuous improvement. Think of our marathon runner in Pune again. After the race, they analyze the performance, adjust their training, and then run again. Then they analyze the next run. This never stops. That is continuous improvement. By definition, it is a sustained effort to improve processes over time through incremental small steps. In simple terms, it is the realization that done is not the end. It is just a chance to start again, but better. You have seen teams that fall into the trap of thinking they are perfect because they had one good sprint. But the reality is that the market changes, the team members change, and the work changes. The retrospective is the heartbeat of your team. If you keep this engine running by creating safety, gathering facts, finding root causes, and committing to small actionable plans, you aren't just a team that works together. You are a team that evolves together. You have now learned how to turn the retrospective from a meeting into a true engine of excellence, ensuring that your team is always stronger, faster, and more efficient than it was yesterday.